सिन्दूरारुणविग्रहां त्रिनयनां माणिक्यमौलिस्फुरत्तारानायकशेखरां स्मितमुखीमापीनवक्षोरुहां पाणिभ्यां मलिपूर्णरत्नचषकं रक्तोत्पलं बिभ्रतीं सौम्यां रत्नघटस्थरक्तचरणां ध्यायेत् पराम् अम्बिकाम्। ॐ ध्यायेन्नित्यं महेशं रजतगिरिनिभं चारुचन्द्रावतंसं रत्नाकल्पोज्ज्वलाङ्गं हर्षमृगवराभीतिहस्तं प्रसन्नं पद्मासीनं समन्तात् स्तुतममरगणैः व्याघ्रकृत्तिं वसानं विश्वाज्यं विश्वबीजं निखिलभयहरं पञ्चवक्त्रं त्रिनेत्रम्। ॐ नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। ॐ गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुः गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुः साक्षात् परं ब्रह्म तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करम्। ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। सर्वोपनिषदो गावो दोग्धा गोपालनन्दनः पार्थो वत्ससुधीर्भोक्ता दुग्धं गीतामृतं महत्।
धृतराष्ट्र उवाच धर्मक्षेत्रे कुरुक्षेत्रे समवेतायुयुत्सवः मामकाः पाण्डवाश्चैव किमकुर्वत सञ्जय। श्रीभगवानुवाच क्लैब्यं मास्मगमः पार्थ नैतत्त्वय्युपपद्यते क्षुद्रं हृदय दौर्बल्यं त्यक्त्वोत्तिष्ठ परन्तप। यदा यदा हि धर्मस्य ग्लानिर्भवति भारत अभ्युत्थानमधर्मस्य तदात्मानं सृजाम्यहम्। परित्राणाय साधूनां विनाशाय च दुष्कृतां धर्म संस्थापनार्थाय संभवामि युगे युगे। वीतराग भयक्रोधा मन्मया माम् उपाश्रिताः बहवो ज्ञानतपसा पूता मद्भावमागताः। कर्मणि अकर्म यः पश्येत् अकर्मणि च कर्म यः स बुद्धिमान् मनुष्येषु स युक्तः कृत्स्न कर्म कृत्। ब्रह्मार्पणं ब्रह्महविर्ब्रह्माग्नौ ब्रह्मणाहुतं ब्रह्मैव तेन गन्तव्यं ब्रह्म कर्म समाधिना। श्रेयान् द्रव्यमयात् यज्ञात् ज्ञानयज्ञः परन्तप सर्वं कर्म अखिलं पार्थ ज्ञाने परिसमाप्यते। तत्विद्धि प्रणिपातेन परिप्रश्नेन सेवया उपदेक्ष्यन्ति ते ज्ञानं ज्ञाननिः तत्त्वदर्शिनः। यज्ञात्वा न पुनर्मोहम् एवं यास्यसि पाण्डव येन भूतान्यशेषेण द्रक्ष्यसि आत्मनि अथो मयि तस्मात् अज्ञानसम्भूतं हृत्स्थं ज्ञानासीनात्मनः छित्त्वा एनं संशयं योगम् आतिष्ठो उत्तिष्ठ भारत न कर्तृत्वं न कर्माणि लोकस्य सृजति प्रभुः न कर्मफलसंयोगम् स्वभावस्तु प्रवर्तते नादत्ते कस्यचित् पापम् न च एव सुकृतं विभुः अज्ञानेनावृतं ज्ञानं तेन मुह्यन्ति जन्तवः ये हि संस्पर्शजा भोगा दुःखयोनय एव ते आद्यन्तवन्तः कौन्तेय न तेषु रमते बुधः.
Wonderful. Thank you, Rakesh. So today is Guru Purnima. I hope you're all enjoying. Very delightful time for meditation. And yeah. One can feel the joy in the air. Let's put it that way. Okay, where were we? 631, is it?
636 we did.
36.
Yes. Because, right. So Arjuna asks about this business of controlling the mind, right?
Yes.
And Bhagavan says, well, abhyasena tu kaunteya vairagyena cha grikhyate. And then he talks about this asamyatatma, and by one who, and the vashyatmana, the one who has ability to control the self. For that person, it is possible through taking the proper means. But if the self is uncontrolled, then it is hard to achieve. Actually, this brings me to a very interesting point, which is relevant to our this Sandhya Vandanam practice. Because as one examines the various approaches that we can take, we have talked about so many different techniques, mantra japa, yoga, etc. And when I look around, I was out of interest also watching what are these other kriyas. I think Pranav had mentioned the Sudarshana kriya that Art of Living mentions. They follow. Then there is something called Isha kriya that the Sadguru's followers follow. And actually, these are all well-intentioned, but there is a certain point that Sadguru himself lightly alluded to, but did not dwell, I felt, deeply enough on, which is that the paths of yoga and Hatha Yoga Pradipika, Raja Yoga, you may say the awakening of Kundalini, Shakti Chalana, Tantra, Sri Vidya Tantra, these etc., they all involve some physiological changes. And he very briefly alludes to that. And they have to be performed with much more supervision and much more, should we say, the qualification of both the person who imparts the knowledge and the one who receives has to be of a certain order. The chance for error is high in those, So you may think that there are various ways in which the Lord gives us knowledge, different pathways, different levels also. But the one wise point he makes is that there are certain ways in which knowledge is transmitted that are so safe and so universally applicable that the chance of error in transmission, even depending on whatever the level of the guru and the shishya, are very, very low. Right? And the Sandhya Vandanam is one such practice. So very safely, anyone can follow it. The chance of something going wrong or an error is very less. Right? The more esoteric and more, you may say, chancy the path, then there is a, depending on the qualifications and level of both the imparter and the receiver, there can be some, problem. I think in your electrical engineering, you probably have some notion of signal transmission and error correction and very robust transmission, right?
Yes.
So you always send some extra bits so you can reconstruct the signal at the end of it, right? We may think of Sandhya Vandanam like that. It is an extremely robust transmission. So even if there are some small errors along the way, there is enough error correction codes at the end that it will adjust. Okay. And why is this? It's because if you think about it, you look at all these other kriyas that have been invented. How old are they? How old is Sudarshan Kriya?
30 years.
30 years. Isha Kriya? Okay. How old do you think the Sandhya Vandanam is?
Probably eternal.
Right. Now, of all the gurus whom we follow, how many of them you think followed Sandhya Vandanam and how many followed these other kriyas? Obviously, the answer is all of them respected the Sandhya Vandanam. Right? If it was good enough for Adi Shankaracharya and Bhagavan Sri Ramakrishna and Ramana Maharshi, it was probably good enough for us. Right? Yeah. So, but why then? Why has this become fallen off? And the answers came from all of your contributions, which I'm very grateful. You all shared your personal experiences with this. One thing is, if you don't explain something to someone and you ask them to do it again and again, and I think Sadhguru also points this out. So there is glimmerings of wisdom in what he's saying. That practice will fall off. It's very, very difficult to do something purely out of faith and commitment if you do not understand it at all, right? Because it's basically saying suspend your certain part of your mind all the time when you do this, right? That's not possible beyond a point, right? On the other hand, if you can derive even a modicum of benefit, you see that benefit and you understand a little bit of it, it's going to multiply that, the commitment manifold, right? So this is one challenge. So first thing is the very instruction, the very way we are brought into it, that has fallen off. Second thing, over the years, people have developed, Hindus themselves, a kind of a little bit of looking down on it, a little bit of association of certain negative thoughts with the Ved itself and the people who practice it. Now, there has become a feeling, I think, that it is powerless, that it is just rote repetition, that it's so complicated on top of that. So many things to do. Hands have to be moved, this has to be done, so many rules, and difficult to pronounce in a language that we don't know. All this has created seeming impediments, correct? Right? But if you think about it, those impediments are created in the mind of the aspirant. They are not actually impediments in the technique itself, right? Once you master the technique, you will see it is extremely simple. There are only 24 steps to it. Each step, and interesting enough, if you look at Gayatri Mantra, number of syllables is also 24. So there is a parallel. So what we would like to do in this Sandhya Vandanam exercise is to examine each of those steps and look at the adhyatmic meaning of every step. And then it will kind of, I hope, come alive. It will start to have meaning, and you'll be able to derive a lot of benefit from it. It does require some work. First of all, we have to set aside all the previous mental associations we had with this and engage with it in a new way. Now, where the other modern gurus are successful in that is, they said, because these have these past associations, let's not bring it up. Okay. If I bring in something new, people will be more likely to adopt it, right? But this is a cost-benefit analysis that everyone makes on their own. Yes, there is a benefit to the fact that you can attract many people by saying this has got none of the baggage. We call it baggage, right? So the moment you say something from the way, there is baggage. There is plus and minus. 5,000 years of tradition, 5,000 years of baggage also, right? If somebody has had negative association with it, it is going to perpetuate, right? So this is definitely that kind of a thing. On the other hand, given that there are so many devout Hindus in Bharat and in the world, if one can tap into it, you can help also a large number of. It's also an accessibility. If you can broadcast on the right frequency, that frequency will reach a large number of people too. And more importantly, because it is a tried and tested approach that has never hurt anyone so far. No one has had any mishaps because of doing Sandhya Vandanam, ever, right? So it's a very robust technique. In other kriyas, as some of you shared very nicely, their experiences is not always uniformly positive. Right from the beginning, when I talked about meditation and intense pranayama, etc., I cautioned again and again that these are tricky paths. It may not work for everybody. It depends on the preparation of the aspirant. Whereas this one, whatever the preparation, it is extremely robust. Agnostic of initial conditions. It will deliver the result.
Dr. Shankar, can I
Yes.
ask a question? I have heard in many places that no two sadhaks can have the same technique which works for both of them. Sadhana is very unique for every sadhak, but you're saying that Sandhya Vandanam is a technique that works universally. Is that?
Yes, it does. And I'm saying this after having tried all the techniques, right? So I have tried, as in various times I mentioned to you, the pranayam, the hatha yoga, Raj Yoga, Jnana Yoga, also quite a bit of the karma kand, right? And after doing this full circle, what I can say is that if I were to prescribe one thing that would help everybody, it is this one, right? When they say that it is unique, this is the portal. It is the threshold. If you pass through the threshold, right, then you'll be better prepared to choose which one is. But if we never pass through the threshold, then if we try to jump into it, it becomes harder, is what I'm saying. Right? It's like an entry portal.
Mm-hmm. So you're saying in the starting phase, this robust technique is what everyone can do.
Exactly. And what you will find is within this beautiful prayer itself, there will be some parts that will appeal to you. And that itself will, there will be a certain resonance. This particular part of the Vandana is very special. That depends on your nature. Yeah.
So just Dr. Shankar, I share. So that is the reason. That's why when the Upanan is performed the early age, the Sandhya Vandanam practice, the Gayatri Japa and Sandhya Vandanam is introduced. Probably this is universal, like a threshold you mentioned, right?
That's right. Indeed. And as we discuss more, I've prepared one video already on the meaning of Sandhya Vandanam, which I think, Rakesh, now you have on that folder, right? In Google Drive.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So already he has finished. One is the introduction, which is to be posted on YouTube for the general public. That's already ready. I actually made a second part to that introduction also, which can be, whenever it is ready, that can also be set up. For Sunday's practice for the first session, I've made one called the introduction, the meaning of Sandhya Vandana, part 1. I would like to make another one on the meaning, which is expanding on this 24 angas, and also so when you first encounter the Sandhya practice, even if you recognize there are 24, the purpose is not clear. It's not like a manual in which the goal is laid out, and then these are the steps going towards it. You know what I'm saying? That is not clear for many people. So you can do it, and then there is a set of sequence of actions, and you do them, and one can perform it for many years and not know what is the how is this organized? How are these 24 angas organized? What is the nature of this this object, which is the worship? And again, in part 2 of that meaning, I'll try to give you the idea of that. How is it organized, right? And what is the core of the worship? And once that is clear, then we can take up each one of the angas step by step, discuss what each one is doing, what is the deeper meaning. And when you do that on a weekly basis over a cycle of about 24 to 25 weeks, which will work out to about 6 months, one can cover the entire gamut of it. And at a minimum, this way, those who attend will be practicing it on Sundays. And ideally, I was going to give Rakesh a spreadsheet in which you can track your practice through the week also. And the more you're able to do, obviously, the better. But at least this will give you a reminder every week that this is the way to do it. For those of you who are not familiar with the mantras, it will take some time also. That's why the 6 months is not a bad time frame actually, because it takes some time to actually memorize the mantras. There are quite a few, although it seems only 24. For a beginner, memorizing each mantra will take some time. Secondly, Rakesh kindly sent around that preparations, I think, or requirements. Right?
Yeah,
I thought those were requirements on the mental preparation, but they were actually purely the physical dravya requirements. That's okay. Normally, people think in the dravya frame only. Of course, the more requirements are the mental frame. Nevertheless, if you are able to acquire all those or you have them in possession, that is good. But if you do not, don't let it stop you from starting. At least in the beginning, you can do the mantra aspect. You can just chant mentally or physically, ideally, that I will, along with the video. And it is good, I think, in time to acquire those dravyas. They are not many. The Panchapatra Uddharani, actually, Rakesh found a good source in Iowa City or something. Probably there are good online sources also if one is so inclined to get that. In terms of Yajñopavit, usually local temples will have. Of course, this is to be worn if you have had the Upanayana. If you have not had the Upanayana, I suggest listen to the mantras and you can follow along. And again, in that form, there is a thing, if you have not had the Upanayana, would you like to have it, etc. These are questions asked and you can respond appropriately. And again, also for all the women who would like to attend, listening is totally a great Shravana and Manana, and also saying is fine, right? I personally don't have a problem even if a lady decides to wear Upanayana and do it. But we have to think a little bit that there is a social context in Hinduism where currently that's not accepted. People find it strange, right? If any lady is brave enough to weather that and do it, I support. But there is also wisdom in saying, we are trying to do this for both our good and the good of society around us and not create massive upheavals, right? The goal is not to go out there and destabilize everybody's mind, right? So sometimes it's wiser to do the meditative thing in the mind and let it be, right? Maybe the time has yet to come and evolve, and it may yet come when people will be more open-minded about that, right? So this is my humble suggestion. So from my side, there is no restriction in terms of invitation, but there is some judgment that everybody has to exercise. These things are in the open public domain. Whether I say anything or not, anybody can go and read these things, right? It's not like I'm not hiding anything great here. And yet, the adhyatmic knowledge is rahasya. I can take a megaphone and blare this into everybody's ear, but if the mind is not open, it will register nothing. I can tell you that, right? And that is why I told Rakesh that the post-practice insights that we give, definitely we want to make sure that the person who approaches that has a love for the Ved, that they have a respect for Vedmata, and that they have a commitment for the Raksha of Vedmata, right? Because the only danger that can happen is that we introduce someone into it whose mind is not in the right direction and is really thinking of some way of, poking fun of this or denigrating it or defaming it, and that we don't want. That it can happen. It sometimes does happen, but there is no need for us to enable it. But I think since everything is, I thought about it, and the reason I decided to still post some of these things publicly is because I think the cat is out of the bag already. If anybody wants to see these things, everything is there. That fellow has performed the complete Sandhya Vandanam in open YouTube channel if you want, right? But the point is this, right? The same words, the way the mind is tuned and reacts to them makes all the difference. And that's why it becomes a mantra. Okay, so little digression, but this is the point. So he says, the upayataha, the appropriate means. So one of these appropriate means is Sandhya Vandanam. Then now 37. Who is going to read?
Start with yeah.
Okay. Arjun Uvacha Ayatihi Shraddhayopeto Yoga Chalitamaanasaha Aprapya Yoga Samsiddhim Kamgatim Krishna Gacchati.
This is a very good question. And what I like about the Bhagavad Gita is it is not all ideals. It talks about every possibility, right? So this is again the mind of a fantastic psychologist, psychiatrist to compose this and posed by the question of the aspirant, Arjuna in this case. Ayatihi Shraddhayopetu Yoga Charitamanasaha. So from yoga, he whose mind has slipped, right? And yet, Shraddha Yopeto, rich in faith, Aprapya, not having attained, Yoga Samsiddhim, the perfection in yoga. What is his state? Who fails to reach? Ayatihi iti, ayatihi aprayatnavat yoga marge shraddhaya astikya buddhya च उपेतः योगात् अंतकाले च चलितं मानसं मनः यस्य सः भ्रष्टमानसः भ्रष्टस्मृतिः सः अप्राप्य योग संसिद्धिं योगफलं सम्यक् दर्शनं काम गतिं हे कृष्ण गच्छति. The lax practitioner of yoga who does not adequately strive after yoga, who yet is rich in faith, that is convinced of yoga's validity, whose mind at the time of death has slipped from yoga, or whose yoga consciousness has deserted him, what is his fate? What goal does he reach, O Krishna, having failed to attain perfection in yoga? So is this answer Bhagavan gives, and who is going to read the answer?
I can read.
Actually Bhagavan's answer comes in 3 verses down. Please read, Resi. This is still continuation of Arjuna's question.
Kachit na ubhay vibhrishtaha chinna brahm ivi nashyati अप्रतिष्ठो महाबाहो विमूढ़ो ब्रह्मणः पथि.
Yeah. So again, very beautiful question. Kachin ubhaya vibrishta chinna brahmiva nashyati. So the one who has fallen off from both. So ubhaya vibrashta, both karma and yoga. Kimna, kachit kimna ubhaya vibrashta. Karma margat, yoga margat cha vibrashta. Sun, chinna brahm iva, like a rent cloud, scattered cloud. Kimvana nashyati, does he not perish? Apratishto mahabaho, vimudo brahmana pati. Apratishto brahmanaha, unestablished in the path of Brahman. Vimudaha, confounded. O hero, does he not perish? So apratishto brahmana patihi, on the path of Brahman, right? Not established on the path of Brahman, fallen off from both karma yoga and raja yoga. Vimuda, what happens to him? Does he not perish? Yet he had faith. He has faith, but at the time of passing, his yoga perfection fell off. Now, next verse, please.
I'll go.
Please.
Sorry. एतन्मे संशयं कृष्ण छेत्तुमर्हस्य शेषतः त्वदन्यः संशयस्यास्य छेत्ता न ह्युपपद्यते.
Beautiful. Etam me samshayam, this doubt of mine, O Krishna, chetum arhasi asheshata, you must dispel this doubt in its entirety without any reminder. Asheshata, tvad anyaha, samshaya asya cheta na hi upapadyati. No one but you, tvad anyaha, other than you, samshayasya, this one, this doubt of mine, asya samshayasya, cheta, the one who can dispel, nahi upapadyati, there is no one else. Again and again we see Arjuna's complete faith in the Lord, right? He does not go around asking. So normally when we get a doubt, we will search on Google, and then if Google doesn't give the right result, maybe Bing or Explorer. That is not his approach. He's not consulting different shastras and different books and going around, right? His faith is firm in the right person. So he says, only you can dispel this doubt. So that's the beauty again of the Bhagavad Gita. Acha, next one please. Sri Bhagavan Uvacha now.
You can go. Parthanevah namutram vinashasya cha vidhate nahi kalyanakatyasya durgati tat gashyati.
So Sri Bhagavan Uvacha. Partha na eva na iva eha. Na eva iha, sorry. Naiveha na eva iha na mutra vinashaha tasya vidyate. Not here, nor in the world to be, does he perish. Nahi kalyanakrit kaschid durgatim tata gacchati. One who has done good does not attain to evil ever. Tata, in this case, son, does not go to a durgati, to a bad end. Why? Because he was a kalyanakrit and he had shraddha. Right? So the Lord is giving faith to the aspirant, neither in this world, that is in the bhulok, or in the next lok, pitrulok, na eva iha loke na amutta parasmin va loke vinasha tasya vidyate nasti. There is no ruin, right? And this echoes back to the Sankhya Yoga, that the true nature of is avinashi tu tad vidhi, right?
Mhm.
Is indestructible. Yena sarvam idam tatam. And so Bhagavan is clarifying this point again. Acha, any doubt? This is all fairly clear, right? These 4 verses? Or is there a doubt? Let us take a second to consider if you have any doubts or questions or comments on these 4 verses. Arjuna's question and Bhagavan Sri Krishna's answer.
So I don't have a doubt, but just a reflection, Professor.
Mm-hmm.
So the way Arjun asks question, that is amazing. Like he have all critical questions, but he have utmost faith also. So like this combination is amazing.
Yeah.
Sometimes if the faith is blind faith, then the questions don't get answered, or we don't feel comfortable putting that. Or sometimes there are questions, but there is no shraddha. Then it doesn't help either the questioner or the person who is giving answer. So this is like very amazing and inspiring.
Fantastic. Yes, I think you've dialed in spot on to that point, which actually sometimes people find this difficult to reconcile, right? Can a person have, and that's why the whole thing, oh, it is blind faith, right? There is a fear that if I have faith, it will be blind. No, it doesn't have to be. I think you've raised a very good point. One can be endowed with complete faith and yet have piercingly accurate questions.
Yeah.
Acha. So then we can move to the next verse if everyone is happy with that. 41.
I can read, please. Prapya punya krutam lokan ushitva saswati samah suchinam srimatam gehe yoga brastho abhijayate.
Very nice. Yes. Prapya, having attained, punya kritam lokan, the spheres attained through punya of meritorious, the worlds of the meritorious. Ushitva, Saswati Samaha, after sojourning there long-lasting years. I like the English Saswati Samaha. Shuchinam Srimatam Gehe. So Shuchi is pure and Srimata is prosperous. Gehe. Abhijayate. So this person, Yoga Brashtaha, the one who has fallen from yoga, then is born in a pure and prosperous household. So having attained the worlds merited by those punya activities, sojourning there for a long time, then is reborn in a house that is both pure and prosperous. Then next one, 42.
Shankar Mama, I can read.
Please.
Atava yoginam ivekule bhaviti dimatam etaddi durlabhataram loke janma yad idrisham.
Very good. I'm glad you're attempting it and encourage you to. And it's nice you have dad to help you along. Right? Slowly, more you practice, it will not seem so unfamiliar. Very nice. Athava, or else, yoginam eva kule, in a family of yogis, verily, bhavati dhimatam happens. So the dhimatam again goes with yoginam, wise yogis. Dhimatam yoginam kule bhavati. What happens? His birth. Etadhi, this one itself, durlabhataram. So this is a comparative, like, we say good, better, best, happy, happier, happiest. The tara suffix denotes the comparative. Right? So good is the adjective, comparative, better, superlative is best. So we would say durlabha, durlabhatara, durlabhatama. in Sanskrit. So the second one. So it is, even this one is harder. Janma yad idrisham, this kind of a birth is far rarer in the world. Or he is born in a family of wise yogis. This sort of birth, however, is far rarer in the world. So the first one was pure and prosperous. The second one was in the yogis, which is harder, shall we say, rarer. Okay, next one, 43.
I can go.
Please.
Tatra tam buddhi sangyogam labate parva dehikam yatate chayato bhuyah samsiddho kuru nandana.
Very nice. Now, before we move to the next one, I just caught my eye. The translation of the commentary is very nice on the previous verse. So let us actually completely finish that. Athaiti, Athavad Srimatam Kulat Anyasmin Yoginam Eva Daridranam Kule Bhavati. So the first birth was in a prosperous family. The second birth was in a rarer birth, was in the indigent family. See this. That is intelligent as distinct from the home of the prosperous. Indeed, this kind of birth in home of poor yogins. Etat hi janma yat daridranam yoginam kule durlabhataram tu dukkha labhyataram. More difficult to gain in this world. Purvam apeksha loke janma yat idrisham yathokta visheshena kule. So, this is a very interesting angle that Bhagavan Sri Shankaracharya points out, that normally we think, they are very lucky to be born in a wealthy and prosperous household, right? This is the normal thinking, correct? But he's saying, if born in an indigent family of yogis, this is even higher. This is a very remarkable and unique viewpoint of Sanatana Dharma. But at some level, I would not even say unique. Interestingly, if you go and look at the Christian religion, if you look at the Catholic Church, their practices are generally fairly opulent. And prosperous. But there were many movements within that of the people like this Saint Benedict, the monks, Saint Francis who started the Franciscans, and their great thing was poverty, to take the vow of poverty, right? And there were a lot of conflicts within the church itself between, so the whole question of should the church with a capital C own wealth, and what is its justification for owning wealth, and what is the role of poverty, etc. So interestingly, those debates have now fallen off. And nobody debates those things anymore. I think overall there is a consensus that wealth is a good thing. But Bhagavan points out that if such be the, at least we need not curse our ancestors for any such indigence. We can strive even from there onwards. I just thought it was an interesting angle, which may seem contrary to worldly thinking. Anyway, next point.
So, Dr. Shankar, one quick follow-up. So looking at those, last two verses, what we hear, depending on somebody's karma, I mean the practice, right? How far? So that means in the unseen world, there is a competition between who can go to the more the good family, right? So probably.
Yeah, well, indeed. So the idea is that the mind, when it leaves the body, taking with it all the pranas, right? At the time of departure, whatever is predominant in the mind, and taking the sum of all those vasanas, it takes on the next body. the next physical manifestation, right? And all that Bhagavan is saying is, even if at that instant, at that prayana kal, there is not an instant release, the due merits that have been acquired in that life leads to a better loka, where the jiva sojourns, enjoying those pleasures, and then takes again a birth according to the past merit. So the good birth is first mentioned, then even the better birth is mentioned. And I would not say, okay, it's a good question. Is it a competition? I would say the following, every person's birth is uniquely tuned to address those things that need to be addressed in the mind in that life. Okay. So the experience is tuned. You might say that all of our life experiences contain hidden in them the exact solution to our problems. No one has been assigned even epsilon different solution. Does that make sense? So let us say there is a composition of vasanas in any mind. The next birth is the exact set of experiences designed to allow those vasanas to be terminated within that lifetime. So the only question is, can one apply? It's very hard to, so this, it is very hard to maintain this insight and thinking through every instant of life, right? It is one thing to say it today in a nice, happy satsang moment, but the next moment when some incredible, irritating challenge arises from life circumstances, to keep that in mind is hard, right? But this is the, shall we say, hard one understanding.
So, Dr. Shankar, it seems like there is no such thing as failure in yoga.
Exactly.
It's just a matter of when.
Fabulous.
And if the urgency is strong enough, then, I mean, but that one has to gauge, right? How strong is that urgency?
Shalabh, your conclusion is fantastic and deeply insightful. Very nice. Indeed. Indeed. This is absolutely true. Fabulous. Yes. Very nice. Excellent comment and insight. Right. So, we have to read no, sorry, you read 43 already, right? Mahesh?
Yes. Yes.
Sorry. So I need to retranslate. Tatra, there, tam buddhi samyogam labhate, through the union with the buddhi, he gains paurvadehikam of the previous body, yatate cha tataha bhuyah, then he labors harder, samsiddhau kurunandana, in order to attain perfection. O delighter of the Kurus. So, tatra tam buddhi samyogam labhate paurvadehikam. So now, we constantly talk about this point of taking recourse to buddhi, right? Right? And remember that within our panchakosha, there is annamaya, pranamaya, manomaya, Vijnanamaya, and in Vijnanamaya resides the buddhi, right? So when we take recourse to that buddhi, then that gives the memory of the ideas relating to the previous body. Paurva Dehikam. Now in Yoga Sutra itself, it is mentioned that there are benefits from the yamas and niyamas. So yamas are ahimsa, satya, asteya, brahmacharya, aparigraha. And remember, it says aparigraha sthairye janma kathanta sambodha. By becoming very well established in this non-grasping attitude, the very cause for one's birth becomes clear. So why did I take this birth? What was my previous birth, right? Why am I undergoing these experiences? And this fact that I said that they are perfectly tuned, that will become clear, right?
Can you repeat by doing what it becomes clear?
So by taking recourse to the buddhi, right, then this fruit of that yama, which was aparahirgasthaiye, janmakathan, then becomes clear this point. That is, through buddhi samyog, how does one gain that paurvadehikam? I'm saying is also echoed in the Yoga Sutra, that through a certain practice, one attains that. It is the buddhi that gives us that wisdom. It says, aha, you are experiencing these things because of X, right? Now, I should caution that the exercise of trying to find out what one's previous birth was is not recommended. This is a tamasic exercise. There are people who try to go to seances and mediums and jyotish and find out what was I in my last life, what was I in the life before that, where did I live, what did I do. This is entirely useless, okay? Just like other siddhis, this happens as a consequence of practice. That's all. But the generic formula, you don't need to know the specifics. All that you need to know is that that which is being given right now is the exact solution to the things that need to be solved. And if that conviction becomes firm, then there is really not, again, if you read Yoga Sutra Vivarana, which is attributed to Sri Bhagavan Shankaracharya, there again, there is a narrative of the sage Jaigishivya, who had vision of all his past lives. And then in the end, somebody asked him, so what did you learn from all that? He said, actually, nothing. You know, knowing in detail all my past lives did not grant me anything new, other than that what I'm experiencing is the right solution for whatever needs to be resolved.
I have a question, Dr. Shankar.
Yes.
So you mentioned, maybe we already discussed this before. You mentioned the buddhi resides in the Vijnanamaya kosha, right?
Yes.
So our faculty of the mind, like as the yogic system says, so manas, chitta, ahankar, buddhi, right?
Mm-hmm.
4 faculties of the mind. So that means the Vijnanamaya kosha. I mean, we are not past the annamaya and then pranamaya yet. So that means the buddhi, we have not assessed the buddhi, that Vijnanamaya kosha or that stage yet, right? So that means the buddhi, out of the 4 faculty, maybe like manas, chitta, ahankar there, but the buddhi has not opened yet.
Why do you say that?
Can I say that? I mean,
no, you're coming to satsang and you're reading Bhagavad Gita. Why is your buddhi not working?
So intuition, I would say, the intuition, the dhimahi, what is the Gayatri is referring to. So
right.
I'm kind of trying to connect.
I think you're being too hard on yourself.
Okay.
So first of all, obviously your buddhi is working. Otherwise, you would not be reading the Bhagavad Gita. You would not be practicing Sandhya Vandanam. These are all examples of your buddhi working.
Okay.
Right? You are able to see, whenever you're able to see yourself in a third person, right? So you say, oh, Mahesh is doing this, right? Correct? Then you've already, from the standpoint of buddhi only, you can say that, right? When you can rise above your day-to-day circumstances, if you reflect at the end of the day, okay, so what did Mahesh do today? What did I do today? What were the experiences? You've already placed yourself in the Vijnanamaya Kosh, right? It's just a question of what perspective. You're exercising the perspective, but I think you are doubting whether you're exercising the perspective, right? So yeah, when you sit in meditation, some thought arises and you rise above it and you say, what is this thought? Where did it come? To whom did this thought occur? What did the body do today? So I did X, Y, Z. What did the mind do? It imported and exported. This standpoint is the buddhi. At that instant, you are exercising your buddhi and you are viewing things from the Vijnanamaya Kosh. Right? So even the instant where you accept this Vedantic model of the mind as having 4 faculties, already you are exercising the Vijnanamaya Kosh. If you did not, then you would not accept the model at all. Right? Do you see what I'm saying?
Right, yeah.
The very acceptance of the model is the buddhi working. Then, so that is, say, Shravana. Then the contemplation on it, which you're rightly doing, is Manana. Then eventually, as its application becomes deeper and deeper and deeper, I mean, after all, without that buddhi, why would you have faith to come to satsang? Why would you read the Bhagavad Gita? Why would you practice? These are all functions of the buddhi. Right? So in fact, we are all living these verses. Everything that Arjuna said, we are all living this.
Right.
It is only by leveraging this past punya that this very satsang is assembled.
Yeah.
Right? So I would say never doubt for a moment that point. It's only the mind that is throwing these things up, you know.
Yes, yeah. So the confusion arises just because, after we, discussed that.
Yes,
so
and it's good. It's important to talk about the confusion. Just like earlier Pranav was saying, to ask the searing questions is not wrong. It is correct, right? Then again and again, we have to remind ourselves, well, let us reason this out. Right?
Sure.
So you can reason it out, right? Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah.
So as long as you find the response I gave to be consistent and reasonable, then you can apply it. Right? And when it is applied repeatedly to the question, every time it arises, different questions, then finally that inevitability of the truth becomes dominant. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes, yeah.
So what our Vedantic model gives, it gives us a lens through which to interpret world experience. Right? And the acceptance of that lens and perspective and framework itself is a function of buddhi. Because for many people, even accepting that is very hard, Right? It would seem very far-fetched for some. So, you're convinced now?
Sounds good. Yeah. Yeah, I feel good now.
Yeah, you're not at all far from it. I would say you're doing the right things without acknowledging that you're doing the right things.
Sure.
Yeah. That's very good. Next one. Should we finish one last? Oh, it's 6:30 actually. Probably not a bad. Well, let us actually read 44 because it's pertinent to what Mahesh just said. Let us read 44 if somebody will please for the next one.
I can read.
Yes, please.
पूर्वाभ्यासेन तेनैव क्रियते यवशोऽपि सः जिज्ञासुः अपि योगस्य शब्दब्रह्म अतिवर्तते.
So, purva abhyasena tena eva hriyate hi avasho api saha. Through the prior discipline, purva abhyasena, instrumental case, hriyate, he is attracted, he avasho api, sort of inevitably. Jigyasurapi yogasya, the one who even desires to know about yoga, Shabda Brahma Ativartate, he goes beyond the sphere of Vedic injunctions. Right? So this echoes what I was saying, right? The very fact that one is drawn is indication of the buddhi and indication of the purva abhyas. Right? So let us read this little bit more carefully. Purva abhyasena iti. Yaha purva janmani krata abhyasa sa purva abhyasa. That is clear, right? The kind of a nirukta phrase. What was done in previous births, krita abhyasa, that was purva abhyasa. Tena eva balavata hriyate samsiddhau hi yasmat avashaha api saha yoga brashtaha. Tena eva balavata. Through its power, he is attracted. Samsiddhihi. He yasmat avashaha api sa. This yoga brashta, the one who has fallen, who is not master of himself. Tena kritam chet yoga abhyasajat samskarat balavattaram dharmadi lakshanam karma. If he has performed righteous works, he is attracted by their impressions in his mind. If unrighteous works have been performed, indeed, they will subdue his impressions of yoga practice. Adharmaha chet balavattaraha kritaha tena yogajo api samskaraha abhibhuyate eva. Tat kshaye, when the more potent impressions weaken, the yogic impressions assert themselves in the results they produce. Tat kshaye tu yoga jaha samskaraha swayameva karya arabhate. Ta dirgha kalasthasya api vinashaha tasya asti ityarthaha. The yogic impressions do not perish even when held up for a long period. अतः जिज्ञासुः अपि योगस्य स्वरूपं ज्ञातुम् इच्छन् अपि योगमार्गे प्रवृत्तः. World renouncing yogin who has slipped, as logic implies in this context, goes beyond the sphere of the fruits of the Vedic works. He sets them aside. Sannyasi yoga brashtaha samarthyat sopi shabda brahma vedokta karmanusthana phalam ativartate atikramati apakarishyati kim uta buddhva yagam tannishtaha abhyasam kuryat. What then to speak of, that should be yogam, not yagam, misprint. What then to speak of one who fully understands yoga and is devoted to its practice? So the notion that going beyond the fruits of the Vedic works, the fruits of the Vedic works only take one as far as Swarga, right? Bhur Bhuva Suva. So what this commentary is saying is that whatever yogic effort one makes, it never perishes. It is sort of sitting there in a bank and it is gaining, now depending on the, so think of it as a CD, right? FDIC insured, certificate of deposit. That money can never go away anywhere, right? Now, if your account, depending on your account balance, right? You may draw on it, or you may, it can be used for good purpose. If your liquidity is very low, then you will not want to spend it. But if you have a good checking account, then you may spend it, right? You may use it for some purpose. So in that sense, so the relative proportion of dharma, adharmic, punya karyas may allow it to flower or not in this life, but it never goes away. So suppose a person does even 32 Gayatri Mantra Japas, right? The fruit of that, the impulse it sets into motion inside never goes. There may be other fluctuations of good and bad deeds, but when the relative proportion of those adharmic deeds subsides, this comes out naturally, right? So, all right. I think that may be a good place to stop. Today we also have a Chandra Grahan at 10 o'clock, I believe. We only have 3 more verses and we will conclude chapter 6. And but let us, I think, hold to that, and that we can complete next time. And any comments on so far what we did today? I think it was a very nice section of Shashtadhyay.
Dr. Shankar, I was thinking about the Nitya Karma. I was trying to reconcile the practice of the importance of the Nitya Karma with today's discussion. So you said that whatever is being given to us, this birth is the exact solution. So we are given this birth and we have the ability to perform the Nitya Karma, then we should definitely do it. Like if we don't do it, then we are kind of letting this birth go away in vain.
Indeed. Yes, indeed. That's a good insight. And the challenge is just that when we are caught up in all the day-to-day activities, which seem to demand so much time, which they do, right? One cannot deny that. We have to start slowly, right? One small step in that direction, right? And so I agree with you, indeed. Yes. And as we make that small change, then things adjust, Don't make a very dramatic change. Overnight, it's not possible to completely transform one's daily schedule, but a small change, maybe on the weekend, little bit of time we can take out. So that helps, indeed. Any other comments? Well, if not, then let us say Swasti Mantram, Shanti Mantram, and conclude for today, and wish you all a very happy rest of Guru Purnima and the Chandra Grahan. Actually, at that time, always at these Grahan times, any kind of japa meditation is very powerful. Although at that time, typically consumption of food is avoided. And any kind of dhan, charity is also multiplied manifold if performed in the Grahana time. So that is the general practice surrounding the Grahanas. They are nothing to be feared or anything like that, but the rules that are in place are wise. It is an alignment of these celestial objects, just like we were talking in Sandhya Vandanam, the 2 lights. All Grahanas involve a linear sort of alignment of these celestial objects, which corresponds to an alignment inside us also, right? So therefore they are special times. But at that time, to undertake, like consumption of food or other activities is generally not very productive. So in that sense, the Shastras are true. It takes some sadhana and practice to understand the subtle meaning of those things. But a safe thing is, as I said, merely avoidance of food consumption around that time, engagement in any japa or that kind of activity, or charity. These are very efficacious Om Tachamyoravrimahe Gatum Yajnaya Gatum Yajnapataye Daivihi Swastirastu Naham Swastirmanushebhyah Urdhvam Jigatu Bheshajam Shanno Astu Dvipadehe Sham Chatushpade. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Namaste everyone. See you in a week. Yeah. Take care.